3 members of a Russian punk band have been found guilty of hooliganism fueled by religious hatred. The women were sentenced today in a Moscow court to 2 years behind bars. They were on trial after staging a performance in a Moscow cathedral where they asked the Virgin Mary to deliver Russia from President Vladimir Putin. And advocates of free speech have protested the case in a number of cities around the world, including right here in Toronto. Stephen Bull has that story.
What happened in Russia was enough to create activists out of Canadians who had never protested before.
It's just not something that I've ever done, although I've supported it. So that changes today. So you can thank Vladimir over in Moscow for making another Canadian activist.
It drew people young and old and attracted artists, including Mark McKinney, who recalls testing the boundaries of taste and tact during his time with the comedy troupe Kids in the Hall, specifically a sketch called Screw You, Taxpayer. But he says just being able to be offensive is a right.
I mean, whether you think that, a punk band should be allowed to crash a church is one thing, but it's a very basic tenet. We got to defend to the death other people's rights to say things that we may or may not disagree with.
Russian expats were thrilled at the turnout, especially because this was not organized by the Russian community. They say it speaks to how many people are worried by what's happening.
If it wasn't for all this awareness and demonstrations, then they would have gotten the maximum 7 years, and no one would have known, and these very smart, educated women would have just been left in the dust.
This is great, and hopefully it brings more attention to the whole situation in Russia, because we were saying for months now there is no democracy and it's going to get even worse.
The crowd thinned out after a couple hours, leaving just some chalk slogans behind.
While this chalk will fade rather quickly, protesters hope the message behind it is what really sticks around. Stephen Bull, CBC News, Toronto.